Here's the basic format for the next 2 hours together, or less than 2 hours together. We are currently giving the introductions to the event. Then there will be framing remarks by Waylon Coleman. We also will have introductions to the debate and speakers, followed by the opening arguments. First, the affirmative speaker will go, then it would be followed by the negative speakers, and then the second affirmative speaker, and followed by the second negative speaker. So that is the order. We will then take 10 minutes for the speakers to prepare their rebuttals. During that time, we will go back to the Menti app, and if you joined us after at 6 or after 6, you will have a chance to do that part of the event, and or if you've already done it, you can take 10 minutes break and take care of yourself. We will encourage you all to interact with that bit. Afterwards, we will listen to the rebuttals from each of the team, negative and affirmative. Then we will have 20 minutes for audience questions. That's when you get to talk to our speakers and ask them your questions. After that, we will have closing arguments, and finally, we will tally everything up and announce the winning team. Although I think we're all winners by being in this conversation. We will continue and conclude with closing remarks.
Thank you, Virginia. I do agree with that. And as the speakers present their arguments, feel free to put your thoughts, comments, and questions in the chat. And we also encourage you to use those emojis throughout the night of our event. And now, for the framing remarks by our comrade on the inside, Waylon X. Coleman. And here is the video.
First, I want to send out my love and solidarity to all of you, and to extend my appreciation for the discussion and debate that you will have surrounding the success and or failures of the Black Lives Matter movement. My name is Waylon X. Coleman. I'm an abolitionist organizer. I've been incarcerated in Massachusetts for 28 years after being accused and convicted of a shooting death that occurred when I was 19 years old. I was tried and convicted by an all-white jury in Worcester, Massachusetts, and sentenced to life without parole. I was sentenced to death. I'm innocent, but actual innocence held no weight against the systematized guilt of my obviously brown skin. I was a 90s Black teenager. I was of the group of kids and teenagers that were being structurally and politically targeted by the police, prosecutors, and the criminal legal system. I've never met or experienced a good cop, such as never been a character in my life story. The first time that I was punched in the face by a cop, I was 15 years old. And that by far wouldn't be my last experience of violence, harassment, and false arrest by mostly white police officers. When I was punched by the cop, who was Black, during an arrest, the ranking officer asked me what had happened to my eye. And when I told him that the cop had punched me, he told me that I must have deserved it. A 15-year-old kid deserving to be punched in the face by a grown man. My ignorance at the time was in thinking that the state considered me a kid, or in believing that my life or safety mattered. I didn't realize at the time that I was a business product being hunted and captured in order to stock the prison shelves. This country has always found or developed ways to profit from the capturing and caging of Black people. And today, in this contemporary setting, we are still subjected to financial exploitation through strategic carceral oppression and dehumanization. Today, you will explore the Black Lives Matter movement and examine its success and failures. You'll look at the ways in which its purpose was defined and critique whether or not that purpose was served. We know that where Black Lives Matter discuss, protest, and expose police violence and murders against Black people, I'm not aware of any component of it that addressed the state-based political violence perpetuated against Black people and communities in the form of mass incarceration strategies. Nor am I aware of any Black Lives Matter protests in response to prison guard killings of Black incarcerated people, such as Gershon Freeman in 2022 in Shelby County Jail, Memphis, Tennessee, who was beaten to death by 10 prison guards. This perhaps suggests that throughout the movement, there was or is a sector of our society where Black lives still don't matter, or in the least, weren't represented in the movement. I'm not suggesting that this means that the movement was a failure. That's on you to explore during your debate. I'm simply encouraging you to look at the holistic picture of Black lives in America and weigh whether or not the movement impacted those lives in any meaningful way. I also encourage you to be critical in how you assign credit for results. For example, if Black Lives Matter positions itself as a nonviolent movement and rejects the more radical and destructive forms of protest, is it then appropriate to assign credit where the more radical form of protest produced the result? I'll reference here the George Floyd case, where I believe that the destructive forms of protest, such as setting police stations on fire, burning police cars, and smashing and expropriating goods from upper and middle class white businesses, created the global attention and produced the outcome of indictment and conviction of the police officers. I could be wrong, but I'm only proposing that you explore how and why credit is issued. In the end, we're all comrades in the same struggle for liberation. And it is important that we always consider ways to improve our voices and movements. I can't wait to hear your debate and see what comes out of it. Again, with all of my love and solidarity, I am yours in the struggle. Waylon X. Coleman.
I'm so grateful to our comrade Waylon for sharing his thoughts with us from the inside. And I want to express my gratitude to Waylon for taking the time to do this framing. I think we can all agree it is a genuine privilege to share space with him in this way. And I am especially grateful to Search Prison Ave team and Elizabeth Ruckus for working on this connection and getting his voice into this space to touch all of us. In the chat, there is a way for you all to send him a little bit of your love. So go to the chat and look at that. Now that the framing has been set, let's hear from tonight's speakers. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to present themselves and their work.
Good evening, everyone. I'll go first. My name is Kay Martinez, and I was an organizer with BLM Cambridge from 2014 to 2015. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I will be arguing in the negative. So I see that 4% of you are 2 people that voted for the disagree. Thank you. We're going to need a little bit more on our side. So, just saying, we're going to have to pick a side tonight. And I just want to give you a little bit about my background. I have been working in higher education over the past 2 decades, and I've worked all over the country, largely working in DEI work. And I spent 2 years in Cambridge as a teaching fellow over at Harvard's Graduate School of Education on critical race theory in education. I'm currently based in Atlanta. I came here for this event. I got in a little bit early to spend some time with my family. Did not know I'd be walking into the blizzard of 2026. I've not seen snow in quite some time. And you know what? I'm good. That was good. Little refresher of what happens up here. And I will be back down south ASAP. But thank you all. Looking forward to it.
I'll follow my partner in debate, Kay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nikisha. My pronouns are she and her. I am also going to be arguing in the negative this evening, and so I see we have some work to do, and we plan to do it. So, so stick around, and hopefully we sway you in our direction. I am a lifeline organizer. I am originally from Boston, born and raised, where I started organizing with the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative as a kid, and around housing, justice, and Upham's Corner. That's where I was. That's where I grew up. And with the Boston Area Youth Organizing Project as a young person, and it goes on from there. Went on to organize with the Poor People's Movement in Philadelphia as a college student, with Cool and Idealist and so many others. And I came back to Boston in a professional capacity in my early 20s, working in philanthropy, funding, organizing, primarily around education policy and justice, before moving to New York City uh, in early 2014, where in the summer of 2014, I began the Black Lives Matter chapter of New York City following the Black Lives Matters Freedom Ride to Ferguson, which I also helped to organize. So I am not new to this. I am true to this. And I was very much looking forward to being back home with you all. I haven't been to Boston or the Boston area for some time. But I am talking to you this evening from Washington, D.C. And hopefully we'll make it up there at some point this year to see all you. I try to avoid Boston or the Boston area in the winter. So so it is. And I'll just say this, that I think the organizing continues. And so I am really, really excited to see that all of you are still doing the work where I cut my teeth, and with the organizers that taught me so much of what I know and what I have carried into the world. My professional work has been in philanthropy for the last couple of decades, as well as several other sort of human rights engagements in the nation's capital, both inside and outside of the political system. And so I believe in doing the work from all angles, and applaud you all, yeah, for keeping it going. And hopefully we can keep connecting after this.
Hello, everyone. Peace and salam. My name is Evelyn Reynolds, and I will be one of the folks arguing in the affirmative that the movement was successful. I see that most of you are on the right side of the line there. Just kidding. Let's see. I don't know where to start. Professionally, I'm a sociologist. I've been teaching at 2 and 4 year colleges for almost 20 years. In 2027, that'll be 20 years of a college teaching career, alhamdulillah. And the interesting thing is, before I moved to this town that I've been teaching full time for 17 years. That's the reason that I came to this town, Champaign-Urbana. You may know the University of Illinois. That's the big school here. But for like the first maybe 5 or 6 years that I was here, no one even knew that I was a professor because I was an organizer, and so that's the way that people knew me. So I created a Black Lives Matter chapter in 2015, and I led that chapter for 4 years. And there were just, yeah, some amazing things that we've done. Maybe I'll be able to talk about a little of that and just the significance of the work that the chapters did across the country. I was also a member of the Strategy Table, which was a small collective of no more than like 25 founders and co-founders of Black Lives Matter chapters across the country. And so I was involved in the strategy table for 2 years as well. And aside from that, I'm a mom, I'm a writer, lover of justice. I like to bake and cook, and I'll yield there. Thank you.
I think next we have Vanessa.
Can you guys hear me? I'm on here twice, so yeah, it's a little tricky. You guys hear an echo or do you just hear me?
You're hearing an echo.
Yeah, so I need to like unmute myself the other way. So let's try this again. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Vanessa, you should be all set. You can unmute now.
Okay, great. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Lynch. I am here in Massachusetts in 2015. My pronouns are she, her. I started a Black Lives Matter chapter in 2014 that served as a kind of umbrella collective to reach and encompass every aspect of community that was necessary to progress towards liberation. And tonight I am arguing in the affirmative that Black Lives Matter has been a successful movement. I'm a mom, artist, educator, writer, creative person all around, and just a person who believes in freedom, I guess. So I'm so excited to just get into it with all of you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanessa, and all our speakers. A special thank you to all of you for joining us here today. And we're incredibly excited to begin the debate. And as a reminder, the prompt is the Black Lives Matter movement was successful. Now, I will pass it to Evelyn Reynolds of the affirmative team to present their opening and remarks for 5 minutes. And we begin.
Hello again, everyone. All right. So the success of a movement is not measured only by whether its goals are achieved, it's also measured by its impact. As a sociologist who teaches about social movements, I found that they can be considered successful if they meet the following outcomes. One, there's a shift in national consciousness. Two, there's a change in institutional behavior. Three, the movement produces measurable policy or outcome shifts. And four, if the movement reshapes long-term political discourse. By those standards, the Black Lives Matter movement succeeded. Most struggles and movements in world history did not reach or complete all of their goals. Were they too failures? Was the civil rights movement a failure because it didn't eliminate racism? Was the women's suffrage movement a failure because sexism persists? Was Occupy Wall Street a failure because we still have economic inequality in the US? What about the Back to Africa movement or Kwame Nkrumah's efforts to, create this United States of Africa? Were they failures because all Africans didn't return to Africa? I could go on and on with these examples. It is intellectually restricted to measure the success of a revolutionary movement solely by whether it achieves all of its goals. There has not been a social movement quite like Black Lives Matter in US history, a movement led largely by youth, women, queer people, one that was consistently disruptive to social structures. It is still the largest protest movement in US history. We have not seen anything as impactful since then. We would not even be having this conversation if Black Lives Matter was not relevant today. It's a movement that will go down in both US history and global history. It's also important to understand that the Black Lives Matter global network was not the same thing as the Black Lives Matter movement. Many of the people and organizers involved in the Black Lives Matter movement were never a part of the Black Lives Matter global network. Furthermore, the BLM movement extended beyond the US. There were Black Lives Matter chapters in Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, Australia, Sweden. Global solidarity protests expanded the work and messaging of Black Lives Matter in places like South Africa, Ghana, and Brazil. The Black Lives Matter movement shaped and informed current day movements and organizations in numerous ways, including the pioneering of decentralized mass action through the use of social media. It was vanguard in centering anti-racist, intersectional, and systemic justice frameworks into the work. The movement moved forward better data collection regarding police misconduct, forcing a reassessment of police practices within educational settings as well as the government. The Black Lives Matter movement has lasting resonance in how protest movements operate today and in the way that they're perceived by the power structure in our contemporary time. And I yield there. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Next up, I will pass it to Nikisha of the negative team to present their opening remarks for 5 minutes.
Webster's dictionary defines success as the gaining of something desired, planned, or attempted. With that definition as our foundation, I am before you today to argue that by any meaningful measure, the Black Lives Matter movement has not been successful. But before I make that case, I want you to understand who is making it. In the summer of 2014, I was there. I was one of the organizers who helped mobilize activists from New York to Ferguson, one of the most significant protests of this generation. I watched ordinary people transform themselves into freedom fighters overnight. I saw the grief, the rage, and the fierce, unshakable determination of activists to bring about meaningful and lasting socio-political change. We were willing to put everything on the line: our safety, our comfort, our futures, to bring about an end to state-sanctioned killing of Black people and to create a world where Black liberation and joy could finally be realized. As a co-founder of Black Lives Matter New York City, I am not an outside critic of this movement. I am one of its architects. I helped shape the demands we made of this country. I helped build the infrastructure that carried those demands into the streets. And so when I tell you that I must now look honestly at the work of me and my comrades, understand that this is not a comfortable thing to do. I am here today, living in Washington, D.C., a city currently under military occupation, and I am reminded every single day that the struggle is not over. I would love nothing more than to tell you that we achieved what we set out to accomplish, but that would not be truthful. And if there was one thing this movement was always grounded in, it was truth. So this is not personal. This is an honest assessment of a movement that I helped to build. Now, to assess any movement's success, we must first establish what success looks like. And we need not look far for a model. We can look to the Black liberation movements that came before us, movements that are globally recognized as having won: the anti-apartheid movement of South Africa and the civil rights movement of the United States. These movements succeeded not because of the size of their rallies, not because they moved people emotionally, and not simply because they shifted public opinion. They succeeded because they produced concrete, codified, lasting change in law and policy that materially improved the lives of Black people. The Civil Rights Movement is perhaps the most instructive predecessor to our own. Over more than 2 decades, it mobilized Black Americans and non-Black allies across the country in the face of extraordinary violence and opposition. But history does not remember it for the size of its marches alone. The history remembers it because of what those marches produce. In 1954, the Brown v. Board of Education ruling struck down the legal segregation of public schools. In 1956, the Montgomery bus boycott brought an end to bus segregation. In 1964, after years of inside political advocacy and outside agitation, including the explicit demands made at the 1963 March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law. And in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was won through the sustained courage of people who marched from Selma to Montgomery, through the relentless pressure placed on President Lyndon B. Johnson, and through the fierce political disruption of leaders like Fannie Lou Hamer and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, who shook the 1964 Democratic National Convention to its core by demanding that Black voices finally be heard and counted. These were not symbolic victories. They were transformational changes written permanently into the law of the land. That is what a successful movement looks like. So what did the Black Lives Matter movement set out to accomplish? Following the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and so many other Black people killed by police and racist vigilantes, our movement mobilized millions of people around a shared vision for Black liberation. We were clear about what we wanted. Among our central demands were these: an end to the state-sanctioned killing of Black people, the defunding of police departments and divestment from the carceral state, and federal reparations for the centuries of harm inflicted upon Black Americans. These demands were not radical fantasies. They were the logical conclusions of a people who had waited long enough. They were bold, they were necessary, and they were ours. But boldness is not success. Let us be honest about where we stand today. Police violence against Black Americans has not ended. The summer of 2020 saw the largest protest movement in American history. Millions of people in every state on every continent demanding change. And yet, the killings continue. Not a single major American city has meaningfully and permanently defunded its police department. Many cities that experimented with reallocating police funds reversed course within a matter of years, often expanding police budgets in response to political pressure. Federal reparations legislation has not passed and has barely been debated seriously on the floor of Congress. And here in Washington, D.C., where I live, I look outside my window at the presence of police military force in the streets of the nation's capital, and I'm reminded of just how far we still have to go. While we have witnessed the introduction of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we have yet to see its passage. There is no landmark law bearing the name of our movement. There is no policy equivalent to the Civil Rights Act, no Voting Rights Act for this generation. By the very definition with which we began, the gaining of something desired, planned, or attempted, we have not yet gained what we desired, planned, and attempted. I say all of this not to dishonor the sacrifice of those who marched, those who organized, and those who arrested, those who lost jobs and relationships and peace of mind in service of this cause. I say it because the movement deserves honesty more than it deserves flattery. The peoples whose names we chanted in the streets deserve more than a movement that declares victory before the work is done. We came to change the world, and by the standard of history, the only standard that ultimately matters, we have not done it yet.
Thank you, Nikisha. And thank you for all audience members, like dropping the emojis. Engagement is great to see. And now I will pass it back to the affirmative team. And we have Vanessa for 5 minutes as well.
To me, it's not a simple thing to try and measure a movement in terms of something as finite as our human lives. There's this proverb that I read somewhere that comes from somewhere in Africa that talks about some kind of wise elder planting a tree and understanding that even though he might not live to see the shade of the tree, he plants it anyway for the benefits of his generations. When I started the Black Lives Matter chapter that I started, I was swept up in a wave of intergenerational, intercontinental struggle for liberation that is currently over 500 years strong. A movement focused on, that's a very humble estimate actually, a movement that is focused on liberation and has still been standing strong through all types of attempts to dismantle and unfray it. This movement could be called sometimes the Black Panther Party. It could be called the uprising in Tunisia. It could be called the 1%. And Black Lives Matter, as it stands in the period of time where it erupted forth, is a current iteration of a liberatory struggle for people and the earth. I think it is very not dynamic of us to look at such a movement in terms that are so binary and simple. Yes or no, did Black Lives Matter succeed or not? And when we're talking about some of the goals that were put forth by various people, it's important to remember that those goals of dismantling the carceral state, as it were, are not things that can happen in a 2-second period of time. Because you think about how long it took to build the prisons, and you have to think that it takes a little while to knock them all down. I believe Black Lives Matter movement was a success because when, this is so ugly to talk about, I hate that I'm here. When George Floyd was murdered and all these young people took to the streets in 2020, some of them didn't know about Trayvon Martin or Mike Brown or Rekia Boyd or Ayanna Taylor or Freddie Gray. They just saw George Floyd's viral murder and decided to stand up and do something. Not unlike what has been happening in Minneapolis right now. So I want to say that the movement is successful because some of us are still alive through what could be called extinction level events. I don't know the current statistics, but I can tell you that in 2015, every 28 seconds, a Black person was killed by police. And I know we have like a gun violence problem in America, but that statistic is something that is crazy to think about. And for anyone who was here early and heard the clip from my oral history when I recalled speaking to the Springfield police chief, I think that ties into what I was speaking about just a moment ago about an intergenerational, very large international struggle for liberation. Because if systems of oppression are intertwined, then systems of liberation have to be intertwined. And I look forward to talking more about the issues of the carceral state, because as we should all know by now, the carceral state is a current adaptation of an extension of the enslavement system that the United States crafted in order to found the nation that exists. So I yield there, and thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Finally, it's back to Kay Martinez of the negative team to present their opening remarks for 5 minutes.
Thank you all. The current mission of Black Lives Matter, as stated on blacklivesmatter.com, is to work inside and outside of the system, to heal the past, reimagine the present, and invest in the future of Black lives through policy change, investment in our communities, and a commitment to arts and culture. The Black Lives Matter movement was not successful because it did not work inside and outside of the system to invest in the future of Black lives through policy change. Successful policy change is lasting policy change. Achieving lasting policy change would look like federal, state, and local levels consistently divesting from incarceration and policing and investing in new approaches to community safety. If the Black Lives Matter movement were successful in safeguarding the future of Black lives through policy change, we would be able to point to the passage of new laws, and we would see police budgets decreasing over the past 13 years since the founding of Black Lives Matter in 2013. However, we are seeing quite the opposite occur as police budgets around the country continue to increase. Investments in new community policing projects like Cop Cities are expanding, and legislative frameworks championed by BLM have failed to pass. In 2020, the Movement for Black Lives unveiled the Breathe Act, a proposed comprehensive legislative framework designed to divest from policing and invest in community safety. The act was supported by members of Congress like Cori Bush and Boston's own Ayanna Pressley, yet it was never formally introduced as a complete bill or passed by either chamber of Congress. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is another example of the BLM movement not securing lasting policy change. The legislation was originally introduced in 2020. The bill twice cleared the House under Democratic control. In 2022, President Biden enacted some of it, including a police misconduct database, and President Trump reversed these reforms in February 2025 with an executive order as soon as he got into office. One example I want to highlight comes out of Austin, Texas. This will illustrate further how the Black Lives Matter movement has not been successful in accomplishing lasting policy change on policing. In 2020, the Austin City Council unanimously voted to cut its police department budget by 30% or $150 million after months of criticism and organizing over the killing of Mike Ramos, an unarmed Black and Latino man. But the win only lasted 1 year. On the same day, Austin City Council members voted to reduce the police budget. Texas Governor Greg Abbott pledged to make it so that cities could never do it again, and lawmakers made good on that promise. In May, Abbott signed into law House Bill 1900, which financially penalized a city that reduces its police budget. So Austin boosted police spending by 50% in 2022. What happened in Austin has occurred all over the country during the last 13 years. Baltimore, Chicago, Dallas, Hartford, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. are among municipalities in the United States that aimed to defund the police. They were able to temporarily reduce police budgets only to then later increase them beyond what they were previously. In the past 3 years since I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, I have witnessed the investment in policing morph into funding new entities known as Cop Cities. Cop City is the nickname for the controversial $109 million, 85-acre Atlanta Police Training Center built in DeKalb County's Weelaunee Forest. It's designed for police and fire training. It includes a mock city, shooting range, and a burn building. Construction is complete, despite intense protests over police militarization, environmental damage, and the destruction of forest space. Atlanta's Cop City is an example of what I call a new community policing project because it is designed to simulate any American city where police can experiment with new or enhanced tactics as a training ground. Rather than investing in constructing new affordable housing for actual people to live in, resources are spent to construct vacant homes to serve as an imitation. Cop City will allow police, not just from Atlanta, but all over the world, to learn repressive tactics so that protests and rebellions can be easily crushed. Within the last 5 years, there has been a quiet rollout of over 80 multi-million-dollar Cop City-like facilities across the country. Looking at the pattern I described earlier in regards to police budgets across the country, it seems like for every momentary win organizers achieved to temporarily reduce the police budget, the state responded with severe backlash, which then increased the budget on policing and created new policing initiatives, as in the case of Cop Cities. As Dr. Carol Anderson said, for every action of African American advancement, there's a reaction, a backlash. Dr. Anderson is professor of Black Studies at Emory University in Atlanta. And this quote came from her viral 2014 op-ed entitled, "Ferguson isn't about Black rage against cops, it's white rage against progress." She says, "White rage works cool, methodically, systematically through courts, through the legislature, through school boards, through the White House. It comes through zoning boards, and those policies pile one on top of the other. There is no doubt that the Black Lives Matter movement was impactful. However, we are here to concretely point out that it was not successful in meeting its own mission, which was to defund police departments and divest from the carceral state, as they stated, by working inside and outside of the system to invest in the future of Black lives through lasting policy change." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kay, and all of our speakers tonight. Now our speakers will move into breakout rooms to work on their rebuttals for the next 10 minutes. This is also a great opportunity for a quick bio break if folks need it. And while they're preparing, we have also a treat for you all. We started this at 5:30, but if you came in at 6 or after 6, you still have a chance. Since we're not able to gather in person, some of you have not had a chance to visit the exhibition tonight. So we would love to give you a sneak peek. To take this virtual look at elements of the exhibition, we will be using a different platform called Menti, which will put the links in the chat, and we'll share the slides on here too. So on the screen right now, you will see a slide with a QR code. If you have a smartphone, please scan the QR code to access the Menti page. If you prefer to use your computer, you can find the direct link and access the code in the chat. Please be sure to respond to the prompts as they appear. Your responses will allow you to move through the visuals and interactive activities. And let us know in the chat if you're experiencing technical difficulties, so one of our members can support. And we've set aside these 10 minutes for this now, but the Menti link will remain open for the next 6 days. So you can return to the virtual exhibition and see what's in there and experience it. Or if you have any thoughts or anything that you want to add for us to have at any time over the next 6 days, the link will remain open. So thank you so much and enjoy.
Ella se ve bonita, aunque a veces le vaya mal. En los ojos una sonrisa, aguantándose llorar. La espuma de sus orillas parecieran de champán. Son alcohol para las heridas, para la tristeza bailar. Son alcohol para las heridas, porque hay mucho que sanar. En el verde monte adentro no se puede respirar. Las nubes están más cerca, con Dios se puede hablar. Si oye el jíbaro llorando, otro más que se marchó. No quería irse por Lando, pero el corrupto lo echó. Y no se sabe hasta cuándo. Quieren quitarme el río y también la playa. Quieren el barrio mío y que abuelita se vaya. No, no suelten la bandera ni olviden la Lolay. Que no quiero que hagan contigo lo que le pasó a Hawái. Nadie quiso irse y quien se fue sueña con volver. Si algún día me tocara, que mucho me va a doler. Otra jíbara luchando, una que no se dejó. No quería irse tampoco y en la isla se quedó. Y no sé, sabe hasta cuándo. Quieren quitarme el río y también la playa. Quieren al barrio mío y que tus hijos se vayan. No, no sueltes la bandera ni olvides la lolay. Que no quiero que hagan contigo lo que le pasó a Hawái. No, no sueltes la bandera ni olvides la lolay. Que no quiero que hagan contigo.
There would always be this argument like, what about the people who are police just because that's their only job? So we got into it. So what we learned by meeting with like Springfield police commissioners and doing all these studies was that in Springfield, the largest group of police were veterans from like different wars, Iraq, the National Guard, and no offense to me, because now I'm scared, but becoming a cop is very easy. It's like 8 weeks of training. It's like so stupid. Like it should not be this easy. So we asked the police commissioner questions and we said, you know, well, we have trauma. Do you think that the Iraq veterans have trauma? And the police response was like, we're not going to separate them out for mental health screenings because we don't want them to feel like we're singling them out. And that was, I think that was around the time that I got really scared and decided to leave the country, because it was like, let me get this straight. It was too much for me, because as a human being, stripped away from anything else, as a human being, when you have a traumatic experience, until you have the tools, resources, and support to work through that, you're going to always be enacting and responding from a place of trauma. So if every cop in the world is the purest soul and heart in the world, if you send people to war because of an economic draft, because young men are like recruited, okay, this is why people don't like me. But like, let me get into like a psychology of maybe becoming a cop for a second. When I was in high school, people came to my school from the Navy, from the Army, from different branches of the military to start recruiting, because I was in a very poor town. A lot of people join the military because they're told they can go to college for free or travel the world for free, and they don't have other options, they feel like, economically, because the United States economic system is one that is based on slavery. So we talked about reparations. But people who go to war and come back traumatized, they can't work at Walmart, they can't work at Target. Every time the cashier bell rings, they're gonna jump and drop stuff. And people who don't understand trauma don't understand what it's like to have PTSD or CPTSD, and soldiers have PTSD. So you get a group of people who come back all traumatized and usually deal with that by like drinking, alcohol, substances, because they're not given the support to face that trauma, human beings. And then the easiest job for them to get is become a cop. You have a military history, you can become a cop. And so I say that with like so much grace, because a lot of people who are cops are like literally just like Nazis. I can say that because we're in a time now where there are just Nazis walking around again. But maybe some people are just trying to get a job. Maybe some people grew up and they want to protect and serve their community. But that's not what happens, because you have this brotherhood of people with very little training and education, a lot of trauma, no idea how to deal with trauma, given guns and told that they can do whatever the hell they want. So for me, we had to understand policing. And what we found was that it is not a system that works. Well, it is a system that works extremely well. It is it is a way to uphold and uplift the values of white supremacy. And so if white supremacy is something that we don't want to live with, then we shouldn't live with policing or a carceral system or prisons. And so this was what we found, but this actually made me lose my mind because the vastness of this network of policing is just really, really vast. And so when I understood what I was trying to do and what I was a part of, it was really scary, and it led me to burnout, which took a lot of time, years to recover from.
Welcome back, everyone. Do we have everybody back? Thanks. Great. We hope you enjoyed the sneak peek of the exhibition and all its elements. And we encourage you to go and catch the last few days of the exhibition if you haven't already. It is at the Foundry and just a short walk from Kendall Square towards East Cambridge. And the exhibition closes Saturday, February 28th. So that is the last day you can see it. And I'll pass it to Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, everybody. Before we took this break, the speakers gave a passionate opening arguments. During the break, they worked on their rebuttals. So now to the speaker rebuttals, beginning with Nakisha. Take it away.
All right. So thank you for your impassioned arguments. I maintain my position that we have to determine some form of metric by which to measure our movements, right? We are not merely here to feel good or to feel good about ourselves, nor just to count the number of people that we mobilize in the streets, right? Regardless of the movement. For if we were to just say that it's good enough for people's hearts and minds to have felt good that they engage in a movement or to count our numbers, then by that measure, every single movement across time has been successful. And that's just not true, right? We have to measure ourselves by something. And so I maintain that if we have not seen any meaningful policy change, I believe my comrade Evelyn talked about the number of policies, right? And that we have to be able to measure impact and achievement. How are we able to do that if there is not something against which to measure ourselves, right? If there's not something actually available for us to look at. We talked about, or it was talked about by my comrades that in 2015, there were Black people, I think, killed by the hands of police about every 15 seconds. And so I just want to draw your attention to the fact that this is taken from the Washington Post, that the number of fatal police shootings has risen in recent years. Police killed the highest number of people on record in 2024. And so not only we didn't just stay the same since our movement began in 2013, but we've actually increased. And so we have to ask ourselves, can we really sit here and honestly call ourselves successful, knowing that we cannot even keep our people alive? If we don't have Black people, then the movement for Black lives or the Black liberation movement or Black Lives Matter is not successful. Black lives must actually be here, be in the living in order for us to matter and for us to call our movement successful. So respectfully, our movement has yet to be successful. Is the arc bending towards success? Yes. But are we there? No.
Thank you. And next we have Vanessa.
Yeah, thank you guys for showing some love in the chat. I really appreciate it. And yeah, As I have said, this being a part of this movement is something that I sacrificed a lot for. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you all. And you know, I do appreciate what was just said, because also Black bodies, Black people shouldn't just be here. We should be thriving, right? But one success that was really obvious that I do want to mention was the implementation of police body cameras. And when I was organizing very actively, that was something we were campaigning for very strongly. We really wanted to see police body cameras, and we pretty much got that effectively passed in many places in the United States. And some of the things that my sort of container of Black Lives Matter was doing, I personally wrote a lot of curriculum that were used throughout prisons all over Massachusetts, in terms of people going into prison and hosting some kind of circles, working with people who are incarcerated. And we actually had a lot of focus on supporting our community of people who are labeled as felons. So I do know that that work was being done, not just by me and my chapter. Um, and I do just want to highlight again what was said in the beginning, which was that from the beginning, Black Lives Matter was an international movement. And we had, even just initially starting chapters in many parts of the world, including Ghana and Canada. So I just want to say that this global movement has had notable impact and policy shifts. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Next, I'll pass it over to Kay Martinez from the negative team to present. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope I had an outfit change. Anyway, I'd like to address one point brought up by Evelyn regarding how you can measure success of a movement. She mentioned that a shift of consciousness is a measure of success. I ask what evidence supports the claim that BLM has created a lasting shift in consciousness. I'd like to cite a 2025 Pew Research study which was focused on public support of BLM from 2017 to February 2025. That study found that Black Lives Matter actually did reach a pretty high mark of public support in June 2020, when 67% of the US adults that they surveyed expressed support. However, what that research study will show you is that support quickly dropped. In September of 2020, 55% of Americans said that they supported the BLM movement, a 12 percentage point decrease from a few months prior, and support had declined again by 2023, when about half of Americans said that they supported the movement. Today, or at the time of the study, it's 2025, support seems to have leveled off. 52% of Americans says that they strongly or somewhat supported the movement, and 45% said that they opposed it. And that was May 2025. I don't have a number in front of me for 2026, but there's a State of the Union address shortly tonight, so I think that pretty much tells you where public sentiment is on that, and I yield.
Thank you, Kay. And next we have Evelyn.
Greetings. I want to actually respond to Kay's last comment because I want to draw from that same research study that was cited, the Pew Research Center. Movements aren't popularity contests. They're about obtaining power. Support has always fluctuated in large protest movements in US history. This is normal. The question is whether Black Lives Matter permanently changed the national agenda and institutional behavior. According to the article that was just mentioned, the Pew Research Center article, Views of Race, Policing, and Black Lives Matter, in the 5 years since George Floyd's killing from May of 2025, they state that about 52% of US residents said they strongly or somewhat support the BLM movement. This is May of 2025. If we look at particular groups, that same study says that support was at 76% for Black adults in the US, 61% for Hispanic and Asian adults in the US, 45% for white adults in the US, 61% for 18 to 29-year-olds, 54% for 30 to 49-year-olds, and 47% for 50 and older. And this again is May of 2025, so not very long ago. And if I have a moment, I hope that I can respond a little bit. I'll start my response to the defund police movement and the issue of federal policy and things like that. The metric for success, again, cannot only be measured by federal legislation. That is too narrow a scope. The US criminal legal system is mostly state and local police departments and prosecutors. That is where budgets are set, union contracts are developed, use of force policies are constructed. Those are the areas that movements can have real impact. And that is where Black Lives Matter did have impact. The National Council of State Legislators has documented a widespread set of state reforms from 2020 to 2021, where over 3,000 bills were reviewed. They even met outside of typical meeting times. And I know my time is up, and so I'll come back to this point if I have a chance later on, but I think that specifically addressed some of the previous comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A lot of persuasive rebuttals in here. We're seeing a lot of activity in chats going back and forth. And next, now we have about 20 minutes for audience questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat or raise your virtual hands to be called upon. So to ensure that the Q&A is effective and inclusive, this is how it'll work for today. Whatever you're sharing should end in a question. Do not use the mic to give your own speech, although we love you. We do need questions here. You will have exactly 1 minute to speak, and you will be muted after 1 minute. You can put the remainder of your thoughts in the chat if you're not finished at the time. We have folks on tech keeping an eye on the chat and noting questions, so we hope to answer any unanswered ones in the TBR March newsletter. Thank you, and now let's see. On to the first question. Let's see what we have. Let me see, we have here. Let's hear from Naomi.
Got it. This is hard because success in one way, not success in another. But particularly, I'm wondering, apparently Trump's approval ratings are tanking. I wonder if people think that perhaps one sort of success Black Lives Matter might claim is contributing to the tanking of Trump's approval ratings. Changing mindset so that people are attentive to things that lead them to see he's being terrible.
Is that your question? If that is people's
yeah. I'm wondering whether one way of thinking about success for Black Lives Matter is getting people to be attentive to things in a way that contributes to what a disaster Trump is and to the tanking of his approval ratings.
I don't know if that was directed at anyone in particular, but I'll just jump in here and say that I think that's a perspective. For the purpose of this discussion, I would caution us as I believe our Comrade Wayland at the framing of our debate said that we want to be mindful that there are multiple movements happening simultaneously, right? And so to be in this moment of, I don't know where those numbers are coming from, but I'm inclined to believe them, that President Trump's approval ratings are declining cannot be a victory, if you want to call it that, claimed exclusively by the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And so if we are here to debate the success of a singular movement, then it is incumbent upon us to be able to have some degree of isolation, right? And so, yes, there are many things happening at the same time that are coming together to create some of the outcomes that we are seeing, and it's the current attitudes and the shifting of minds and hearts. And so I think it's important to try to, create a degree of isolation, which is why I believe it is really important to lay out what the stated goals of this particular movement were at the time of its inception, and what it continues to say that it seeks to accomplish. And you have to measure it against itself, right? What is it saying that it's going to do, rather than being able to take on all that is happening?
And I would agree with what my comrade Nikisha just mentioned. I do think that, yeah, we can't, say that this is just because of the efforts of the Black Lives Matter movement, just like we can't blame the development of cop cities on Black Lives Matter either. Both of those are unfair and different sort of things and different points of history. But I will say, I do think that one of the lasting impacts of Black Lives Matter is the boldness and courageousness that people have to address power structures like presidents of the United States. I do think that was a very strong precedent, not necessarily set exclusively by the Black Lives Matter movement, but certainly present throughout the Black Lives Matter movement. Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to say that measuring a shift in consciousness is really tricky business to begin with. How do you do that? How do you get a really substantive, empirical base anyway? Like, I think it's really relative. You want to measure his approval rating where? And some people still love this guy and some people don't. And I don't know that that's a really strong measure for a social movement, which is why, for our debate today, we really wanted to point to tangible outcomes, the things that we said we wanted to do. Are we doing them? Are we even seeing a decline in patterns? And can we make those last? So yes, there were some wins achieved, but is it a win if it's here today, gone tomorrow? We need to make sure that we keep them. And for us, that's our measure of success, is the long-term enshrinement or stability of these wins.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have Tony with the hand up. Tony B.
Hi, it's wonderful to see this happening here. I am the leader and the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Cambridge. Excuse my voice, which is very poetic. I'm also the poet populist emeritus and the poetry ambassador of Cambridge. But all this voice, you're just hearing it because I'm tired of being scared. Hi, Kay. Hi, Stephanie. My question is, I heard the word tangible, okay? But I want to say intangible means something that lacks physical substance and cannot be touched, felt. But let me say this. Vanessa keeps telling us how emotionally measured it is. And so, as a person who actually stepped out back from Black Lives Matter very early in the beginning because of the emotional challenge, and this is very tough to hold emotions and to be a gangster in terms of civil rights. It just is. And so, Vanessa, I just want to heart you. And I just want to say, in what ways have you I just want to say fear for life, no reward, trauma, burnout. Listen, I'm the leader of BLM, erasure. A lot of people wouldn't know it. And so Vanessa and others who are on this call, I want to touch on how did you heal? And are you still healing? Really? Because I know I am.
I think, like the question, was Black Lives Matter successful? Putting a stoppage point or metric on healing is also not the best thing because I think to be alive fully, you're always going to be healing. That's the nature of trauma and grief. I can say, like, one of my grandmothers died 20 years ago, And sometimes I don't think about her at all. And a couple nights ago, I thought about a poem I used to see in her house on the wall, and I just was so overcome with emotion as if it had just happened the same day. So I thank you for bringing up that element because there is a lot of necessity for healing right now in all the movements that are going on. And I think even just there's a fine, small balance between like being exposed to constant like death and trauma, and then where the point it's just like psychological warfare. So, what an important question you asked. Thank you. But I'm sure other people would like to speak because I will have more to say on this at another time. Yeah. Can't remute myself.
Any of the other panelists like to add more about healing?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have some battle scars from my time in the movement and from my involvement in current organizations as well. And to me, it's, like Vanessa said, it's an ongoing process. It's, it never quite goes away, but it had to mean something to me, for it to impact me in the way that it did, for me to still have these feelings years later. It had to really hit my heart and really be very serious for me to have that sort of impact. So, yeah, the battle scars are there, but that doesn't make me regret the struggle.
I would say something else, actually, because um, gosh, it's so much I don't even know where to begin. Um, I think I'll harken back to the event that took place at the Foundry where some of my comrades were talking about how when we started participating in this movement, we didn't really know what to expect. Uh, you know, and uh, you know, things like we weren't told like, hey, Black Lives Matter is coming to Ferguson, or hey, this. I think in some regards, there was a spontaneity of action. And I think that's a part of growing up. And so I'm very thankful for the movement elders, living and non-living, who created guide marks and pathways for us so that we could look to their wisdom in times like this, and so that we could remember that people with more knowledge than us, with more hardships than us, with more experience than us, have also endured. Um, and it's very important to keep them in mind. I think of like the courage of like Emmett Till's mother and how the insanity of how that must have appeared to people around her. Like, my son was brutalized and I'm going to show this open casket to the world, you know? I think of like Martin Luther King Jr. house being firebombed and still saying, well, actually, nonviolence is the way. I think always about Fred Hampton because Fred Hampton's like a earth angel, you know? And he was so open-hearted. He brought so many people together, and the people that he trusted in the world most, one of them was the informant who helped to take his life. But because these people left behind those guideposts for us, we can find hope and we can find strength to continue, and we can find inspiration and motivation. And in our darkest times, we have to remember that. And in my darkest times, I remembered that. Thank you. Can't mute myself.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, both of you. Then we have Zarina with the hand up. What is your question?
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question. You can hear me, I guess, right?
Yes. we can
All
hear
right.
you.
So I like the discussions what's going on. I think Black Black Lives movements have been really powerful, and I applaud it. I do think it needs some more celebrity endorsement, as well as some ex-presidents involved, as well as from different countries. Um, I think endorsements help. Also, I've been to the African American Museum in DC. I don't know if there's an exhibit there with Black Lives Matter. I think it'd be nice to have a location to go to. I am glad that the Foundry is doing um, this exhibit, and I think it's wonderful. Also, I think empowerment is always important to get your health and wealth in order. And I think those need to be addressed somehow because um, I'm persuaded to this diet called lectin free, which is really good to decrease inflammation. I think African American people haven't had the advantage of taking care of their health as well because of they've been depressed in society. I would love to see more businesses started by African American, as well as like travel industries to go to Africa because it's wide open.
Okay, so we wanted to check if there was a question there, but I see. If you have a question, please put it in the chat for us. Thank you so much. Marilyn, you're next.
I think that in our racial capitalist system, all social justice gains are going to be fought hard against and many reversed. So I think maybe a measure of success of social justice movements is the persistence of the people fighting, that, we don't give up and keep on keeping on, and not just in consciousness and in what people say, but in what they do. So my question is, are there data on this kind of thing, on how many people, say, who are in the Black Lives Matter movement are still in either that or some connected kind of social justice movement?
Thank you. So you're asking if there are people still engaged with BLM and or connected to another movement doing the work. So I'll open the floor for our panelists, our speaker.
Thank you, Marilyn. You asked for data, and that I can't give you right now, but I'll look that up. I don't know if there have been studies done on this, but I know from my years of organizing with BLM and post BLM that I see a lot of former Black Lives Matter organizers and other organizations like Black Alliance for Peace, the African Socialist Party, the AAPRP, the AAPRP as well. There's been a lot the Black, the organization that's put on this event today. There's so many that I'm just kind of like, all these different organizations are coming to mind. So I would just anecdotally say that yes, I think that there are likely many people who used to organize with Black Lives Matter who are also actively a part of other organizations. And even without that, I think that you see the tactics, the language, the methodologies and things like that Black Lives Matter used showing up across these different organizations as well. The All African People's Revolutionary Party is the AAPRP, by the way. And so a lot of us transitioned into, movements and organizations that were doing more internationalist, work and things like that. So yeah, I'll stop there. But I think that there's definitely a presence of former BLM activists across many prominent revolutionary organizations today, especially the African Black revolutionary organizations.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add anything? Thank you. I see Matt W. with the hand up. Go ahead, Matt.
How are you doing? Thank you for this conversation. Certainly educational for me. I'm interested in the panelists' opinions based about the social backlash from some segments of the society and whether it's a signal of success in the for the Black Lives Matter movement insofar as kind of exposing existing racism that people may have thought a thing of the past in some ways, or a negative backlash showing the failure of the movement and contributing to where we are right now politically. So I guess the question is the backlash to the Black Lives Matter movement a sign of success or a failure for
The floor is open.
Well, I mean, I would without a doubt say that the backlash that you are seeing, and I may think, my colleague Kay alluded to it in their opening statement, is an indicator that we have not succeeded, not at all in the ways that I think, I think so many folks would like us to believe, right? Which is why it's very important for us to be able to have something that we can concretely point to say that we won, right? To say that we've been successful. We are living right now, and I think what you are alluding to is a situation where we essentially, for all of the things that my comrades have named, right, all of the great things that have happened, and trust me, I was right there, architect of many of them, right? I created the Say Her Name campaign, so many different things, right? And yet those were essentially our one step forward. And then we've taken not two, but 3 and 5 steps backwards. And we're currently living in the step backwards of it all, right? However, I will say that is the way of the nation. That is the way of the United States, both politically and culturally, right? We live in a nation that has historically just been swinging from one end of a pendulum to the other, right? The pendulum swings one way and it goes really, really extreme. We elect Barack Obama president, and then we got to swing the other way, right? Because the country's got to have balance, right? We can never really land somewhere in the middle, which is perhaps where a successful movement outcome might live, right? So I think we have yet to see that. And so I would say that what you have just named for us is further indication that we have yet to actually succeed, which is what I would say the ultimate win, while there may have been increments and steps towards that along the way, which are all the things that folks are naming here on this call this evening. But if we want to be truthful about where we are, we're not there yet. Almost there, but we're not there yet.
And to that point, that's why I highlighted Dr. Carol Anderson's work. I think she really framed that easily and nicely with white rage as a phrase for that backlash, and that it's not new, that it is a part of American history. There's multiple examples, Reconstruction, for example, Brown versus Board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Every time you do something, there's always going to be more backlash or white rage to make sure that it is not successful. So what I think Lakeisha and I have done in our conversations about this was that it wasn't just the backlash itself that would be a measure of success. It's what were they able to undo? And I feel like the example out of Austin, for example, like to Evelyn's point earlier, right? A lot of these wins came at a local level. Yes, Austin successfully, their city council, huge win, $150 million to reduce the police budget. That's massive. But then same day, Greg Abbott's like, oh, you thought that was cool? Watch this. Now, no one in Texas is going to be able to do it. And so I feel like he could have stayed mad and just been upset about it and go on Truth Social and do whatever you do. But when you were able to enshrine it in law so that no one else could replicate it, then I feel like that backlash is successful because you've undone it and then some. And that's where I feel like we're at. It's not that we cannot acknowledge that there have been major wins. It's just that they haven't been able to keep them.
And I'll also address the point of backlash. Backlash happens when movements are powerful. Institutions and power structures don't try to suppress movements that aren't effective. Backlash is what happens when a movement puts pressure on power structures. If lawmakers are rushing, they can't wait to create new policies and take away more rights and restrict protests, it's because the protests are effective. This proves the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement and the current struggles that people are engaging in. Institutions don't legislate against movements that don't matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much to really consider. It's so many layers. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And now we have the next section coming up, which is closing arguments. Are we ready?
Yes,
Let's
thank
see.
you. Thank you, Barbara, for leading us in the Q&A. And thank you for our speakers. And thank you to our wonderful attendees who have been interacting via emojis on the room. Now for the closing remarks from our speakers, I want to invite from the affirmative team, Vanessa Lynch, to start us off. Thank you.
Yeah, no pressure. I really appreciate that last comment that it's not legislation made against things that are ineffective. Obviously. So, yeah, for me personally, I am going to, uphold the legacy of people being resilient and fighting for justice and liberation. And so, to me, this momentous conversation in a concentrated way looks like just my, conversations with people who ask about this point in time. And I think I've gone through a lot of transitions to be able to come to the place where I can say that it has been an effective movement. And that's because I still believe. So it's that simple for me. And I just so respect everyone's perspective and everyone who made the journey here, even if it's just through the internet. I think it's really profoundly powerful whenever people come together in this kind of way. And I am I'm glad. I don't know. I really don't. That's all. Yep.
Here we have Kate.
Okay, thank you. I feel like when Nikisha and I were preparing for this, we had a lot of conversations about preparing for this argument and the negative. And we wanted to ground ourselves in, well, how are we measuring success? We could have looked to academic frameworks for how do we measure success of a movement, but what we did was look at, well, what did Black Lives Matter say they were going to do? Whether that was historically, as Nikisha talked to you about, her being there when the movement started and they said, this is what we're going to set out to do. And I looked at the website and its modern articulation and what do they say that they're trying to do. And whether you examine the initial goals of BLM or what's on the website right now, BLM has not been successful in meeting their goal of defunding police departments or divesting from the carceral state through policy change. We really wanted to look at lasting policy change. And I think throughout this event, well, Nikisha and I have pointed to several concrete examples of legislative initiatives that failed to pass. Whatever wins were achieved, in temporarily decreasing police budgets did not last very long, as we pointed out. And now, I want to talk about our current reality, where I'm looking at multiple cities across the country that are expanding police budgets. I talked to you about Atlanta, where we're seeing this new cop city movement pop up, and it's coming to a city near you. So we just feel like, although there were significant, moral victories, lexicon maybe, we were not able to really point to lasting policy changes, which were a metric of their own movement's success.
Thank you, Kay. We'll hear from Evelyn for one last time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to just reflect on what Vanessa said too, that I still believe in Black liberation, and I believe in social justice. And that belief was concretized by my involvement in Black Lives Matter. When we evaluate whether Black Lives Matter was a success, we must consider again how social movements are measured. No credible historians, sociologists, activists, political scientists is going to define success as complete eradication of injustice within a decade. Social movements succeed when they shift national consciousness, alter institutional behavior, change the public agenda, and in that, Black Lives Matter succeeded. In 2020, we witnessed the largest protest movement in our history, in US history. Millions of people came out into the streets, regardless of COVID-19. They publicly engaged in a national reckoning on race and state violence. That wasn't symbolic. That was a structural disruption. Following those mobilizations, we saw measurable policy shifts, many of which I've named and I've cited in this conversation at state and local levels, where policing authority actually operates. Departments revised their use of force policies. Duty to intervene laws were expanded. Oversight mechanisms increased. Prosecutorial elections shifted. Corporate and educational institutions adopted racial equity frameworks. That's where all these DEI jobs and groups came from. That didn't exist at this scale prior to the Black Lives Matter movement. Even critics concede that Black Lives Matter permanently transformed public discourse. Terms like systemic racism, racial profiling, police accountability are now a part of mainstream political conversation and language. That is cultural power. Was there backlash? Of course there was backlash. That's what happens when power feels threatened. Did injustice disappear? No. And no serious movement in history has ever achieved total transformation in a generation. But Black Lives Matter altered the terrain of this country and of the world. It redefined whose lives demand public accountability. It mobilized a new generation of civic participation. And research suggests measurable reductions in certain forms of police violence in areas where sustained protests were engaged in. That's not failure. That's movement impact. Black Lives Matter did not end racism in the US. It forced US power structures to confront it publicly, structurally, institutionally. And by every historically grounded measure of social movement success, that is a success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. And now we have Nikisha.
Thank you. And thank you all for your presence this evening. I want to bring us back to our reason for being here this evening, which is to debate whether or not the Black Lives Matter movement, from its inception in 2013 to its current iteration, was a success. And so we must have a metric or baseline by which we are determining success. We are not here, I want to remind you, to determine or debate whether or not it was powerful, whether or not it reached people, whether or not it was widespread, whether or not it made folks feel good, any of those things. Many of them have been discussed here tonight, whether or not there were even incremental wins along the way, whether or not it was moral, right? We are here to determine whether or not it was a success, not against, whatever things that people have come up with over time, right? But we have to look at, have to have a very clear understanding and definition of success. So I started out by bringing us to the dictionary, good old Webster's, right? Which is at least here in this country, something that we've all been able to pull from, right? Recognizing as a funder of organizing, right, that yes, when you were talking about whether something is having a shift in culture, is creating a shift in culture, whether it's even shifting the zeitgeist, right, that there are things that you want to take into consideration. It's something valuable. Yes, the Black Lives Matter movement, extremely valuable, influential even, right? That is how all of these things are happening, right? Yes, legislators are looking to respond to conversations it is a conversation starter. It is changing conversations. However, all of the things that my comrades would have you to believe ought to be considered a win towards success, right, and claiming success of the movement are all things that have been able to be undone, which is precisely why we must look at, was there real codified lasting policy change? Because in the instance where you are able to gain something, where you created a situation in which you made people believe that we have won, to immediately at the changing of the guard, or before they're even preemptively, all the DEI that we were just told that was won, and that's we ought to consider that a success of the movement, it's gone. It was gone preemptively because now look, we have the Supreme Court has just said that, oh yeah, like it's okay for you guys to have DEI, but all the jobs have been gone. Complete departments have been erased from universities, right? And that is absolutely as a result of the movement not being successful. All of the things that we ought to be claiming as a win were able to be undone because the movement did not successfully create lasting, codified policy change that would improve the lives of Black people in this country. And so, no, unfortunately, my beloved movement was not successful.
What a powerhouse. This is it. I have almost no words because folks have done all the speaking. There are no more arguments to be made on this issue tonight. It is now the time, drum rolls, everybody. The poll should go into you. You guys, if you feel swayed, vote. This is your moment. Just a reminder that the Zoom poll should pop up into your screen right now. Please complete the Zoom poll. Yeah. And thank you to all of our speakers. You guys gave it your all for this debate, and we're really, really grateful.
Yes, and while folks are filling out their polls, I'll take a minute while the calculations are being tallied, the votes are being tallied. I just wanted to take time to thank our organizational sponsors. We have the Deeper Than Water Coalition, the Massachusetts Bail Fund, Mass Peace Action, the NAACP Mystic Valley Chapter, Resource Generation, Surge Boston, the Unitarian Universalist First Parish of Cambridge. We have Wellesley Anti-Carceral Collaboratory as well. And of course, our funders, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Navigation Fund, Haymarket People's Fund, New England War Tax Resistance, the Navigation Fund, Wellesley's Anti-Carceral Collaboratory, which is the ACC, the individual contributors, like the local members of the Solidaire Network, and Borealis Philanthropies, especially the emerging LGBTQ Leaders of Color Fund and the Communities Transforming Policing Fund. All of these funders and sponsors help make this exhibition and this event a reality, so we really thank them.
There's just a question in the chat on how people can respond to the poll. Just want to make sure.
Thank you, folks. If the poll is not letting you share your thoughts, you can also use the Menti app, or put your thoughts on the chat if you want to, or use the Menti app if you want to be anonymous. I'm going to share the link for the Menti so that you can share your thoughts there, and we'll be able to gather them. So thank you so much. And everybody else will be able to see your thoughts also, because of it will be open for the next 6 days.
Was everybody able to see the poll go up on their screen?
I'm gonna screen share the Zoom QR code in case people couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll allow 3 more minutes for folks to interact with the poll and to share your thoughts. Okay, folks, we're a little bit over 1 more minute to engage with the poll, and it looks like a lot of you are engaging. So I appreciate it. And then I will share the results with you all. So thank you for your patience. Hey, okay. This is great. I mean, we're sharing the results with all of you, and this has been an amazing conversation. And it's very clear from how we started. We had very few of you put disagree, and a lot of you now swayed that number over to the disagree. So that means that 74% of you were changed your mind because of the debate. So the winning team, drum rolls, are the negative team. So congratulations to you all, and just really thank you for sharing all of your experiences with all of us. As we, oh, go ahead, Nikisha.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for engaging and for voting. I do want to say, though, as a way of a disclaimer, that for everyone to remember as personal, right, as the subject of BLM, we are all organizers here. So many of you in the chat have said all of the ways in which you've been engaging with this movement. That in a debate, there must be a team to argue the affirmative. There must be a team to argue the negative. So it is not necessarily that Kay and I are anti-BLM, nor is it that we personally believe that the movement was not a success. That we were all together engaged in this really awesome project and opportunity to have a conversation. This is a really cool way to talk about our movement and to engage with it. But it was not necessarily that Kay nor I share beliefs of all the things that we brought out tonight, nor is it that we necessarily want you to believe that our movement was not successful. So even though you were swayed for the purposes of the debate, it was a debate. And not a set of just personal impassioned beliefs.
I appreciate that. It is really helpful. Kay, would you like to share some?
Yes, please. Whew, I can take the mask off. I mean, we had a job to do. We came in here, we're like, all right, what are we gonna say? Is that entirely how we believe? Not necessarily. It's complicated. But I just want to say, I think that there were so many highlights. I feel like my involvement in Black Lives Matter Cambridge changed who I am fundamentally, my entire worldview. I have been in higher education, and the way that I show up for students, the way that I push institutions, the way that I'm committed to DEI, no matter if it's here today, tomorrow, we gonna do it. And I know that is because of BLM. So when you can transform a person, it is certainly impactful and successful. But we were here to do a thing, and we did it. But we hope that you keep hope and engagement going, because we're gonna need it, and we need everybody, especially with what's happening tonight, right? We can't just say that we're done. We take a break, you check out, you heal yourself, you heal each other, and we keep going.
I appreciate these words. And I know we're a little bit on time, but I wanted to leave you guys with a last reflection from the team at TBR. And as we close tonight's community debate, we're reminded that movements are not only political projects, they're human ones. And as Prentice Hill, which I've been reading throughout this, it's really great. You guys should get this book, teaches us in What It Takes to Heal. The work of transformation is inseparable from the work of healing. We cannot build the world we long for without tending to the wounds we carry, individually and collectively. So like many of you, I was deeply inspired by Waylon's framing remarks. His words grounded us in lived experience and reminded us that while we continue to fight for so much, there is still so much that goes unacknowledged. There are harms that remain unnamed, labor that remains unseen, and sacrifices that rarely make headlines. I was also moved by reflections shared at the recent event on reparations, where we were reminded that struggle is continuous. Fighting for liberation and freedom is not something we accomplish once and for all, and it becomes culture through practice. It requires commitment to continuous struggle and disciplined collective practice. The Black Lives Matter movement shifted culture in an undeniable way. It brought the language of systemic racism into everyday conversation. It demanded that the names of those taken by state violence be spoken and remembered. It mobilized millions, supported the building of mutual aid networks and alternative forms of community care and safety. We were able to reshape local policy debates and make clear that Black lives Our lives must be valued, not symbolically, but materially. It cracked open a political imagination that many had been told was impossible. And yet, as we discussed tonight, the movement has also faced critiques, questions of sustainability, governance, strategy, accountability, exploitation, and internal harm have surfaced. Some reforms proved limited, as stated by our speakers. Establishment institutions absorbed the language of justice without always transforming their practices. These critiques are not distractions from the work. They are invitations for us to dig deeper into integrity. They're lessons for present and future popular mobilizations. Hemphill reminds us that healing requires truth-telling, accountability, and relationship. And that's what we're trying to do tonight. It requires us to slow down enough to notice where power shows up in our own organizing spaces. It asks us to move beyond urgency as our only mode and to build the structures rooted in care, consent, and collective responsibility. If we are building better movement, we must practice the world we seek inside our organizations. That means aligning our strategies with our values, centering those most impacted, not only in rhetoric, but in leadership and developing the capacity to navigate conflict without fragmentation. One lesson that emerges is the importance of non-reformist reform. These are changes that do not simply make unjust systems more efficient or palatable, but instead shrink their power while expanding community self-determination. Rather than investing more resources into policing with the promise of better training or oversight, non-reformist reforms ask how we divest from harm and invest in housing, healthcare, education, and restorative practice, which is what we really need. They are reforms that move us toward abolition by redistributing power and resources, building community capacity, and making carceral systems less central to public life. Healing does not mean retreat. It means strengthening our ability to stay in relationship like we are right now, to stay in the struggle, to stay committed to transformation even when the spotlight fades. Tonight was not simply a debate about whether the movement was successful. It was a reflection on who we are becoming through this work. If we take seriously what it takes to heal, then this time together can be fuel. Fuel for liberation that is grounded, relational, and sustainable. I know I have fuel right now. Fuel for decolonization that restores dignity in land and language. Fuel for the abolition of the prison and military industrial complex, not only as policy goals, but as reimagining of safety and belonging. May we leave committed not only to resistance, but to repair, not only to critique, but to cultivation, and not only to naming harm, but to building the conditions where healing and freedom can take root. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Virginia, for helping us close out the night. And thank you again to the brilliant speakers for making this event happen. And of course, to all of you for joining us tonight on these snowy days. A final reminder to please visit the exhibition at the Foundry. It's at 101 Rogers Street, short walk from Kendall Square in near East Cambridge. And the final day to see the exhibition is Saturday, February 28th. And we also encourage you to consider making a tax-deductible donation to TBR. There will be a link in the chat for folks who are interested in that. And there is also a link to the exhibition survey. And we would love it if you could take the time to complete that. And thank you and have a great rest of your evening to you all. And we can stop recording here.
Thank you.